Rumpus, you need to understand Quantum Eraser is famous for doctoring up and creating
from a demonstrated liar.
Really good for cutting and pasting.
One at a
This is the
time.
same
Hold on. Can you let George speak? Rumpus, can you let George speak?
So even by his own definition.
Can you let George speak, please? Rumpus, can you let George speak?
Even by his own quote.
Rumpus, one more time, then you're getting kicked out. Just let George speak.
I can speak now?
Hopefully.
Do you want me to leave you to it, George?
Rumpus, please. Just give me a minute. This is the same stuff that Quantum Eraser pulled on me on the Coriolis effect. He lifted bullet points off a book, doctored them up, added his own words to give it his own meaning. He has never posted any original documents or any copies of original documents. I tried to do the sort of thing when we were discussing or tried to get a document on ethical standards of engineers, and Nathan wouldn't let me go to my site to get it. And then I ended up finding a document that was posted by the University of Washington. And if you went to the bottom, it said reprinted by permission of the NCEES, which is the National Council of Examiners for Engineers and Surveyors. Whereas Quantum Eraser is allowed to put up BS that he creates. He emphasizes words that are not in the original documents. In fact, there are no original documents that he posts. These are things that he has created to give the meaning that he wants. He lifts bullet points off documents without reading the whole document. And if you go to the original document, you will find that the meaning has been completely twisted by Quantum Eraser, like on the Coriolis effect. If he goes to this book that he so much brandished around as being authoritative by Douglas Seeger on the Introduction to Ocean Sciences, you will find in there nowhere in the bullet points that he lifted, which were out of the CC12s, which are Critical Concepts 12 of that book. And he was trying to make it sound like the atmosphere, the Earth turns independently of the atmosphere. And that's not what the book said at all in the context. It was saying that the atmosphere as a whole rotates at the same speed as the surface of the Earth, but there can be air masses within the atmosphere that act independently and are subjected to the Coriolis effect. But the whole atmosphere as a whole, taken in its entirety, rotates with the surface of the Earth at the same rate as the surface of the Earth.
I don't understand, George. If that's the case, sorry, can I just ask George a quick question? And then hopefully you'll give John an opportunity to respond. But my quick question is, if they're rotating together, then it's not Coriolis. You have separate reference frames in the Coriolis effect, regardless of Earth-based or not. That is the Coriolis. Separate. Sorry, I hadn't quite finished. Hadn't quite finished, George. I made sure you had enough air to answer your question and air as much as you liked. I've got about 5 seconds out of you. Thank you. So, the Coriolis effect, regardless of whether it's Earth-based, just the Coriolis effect, forget what it's in reference to, specifically is about having two separate reference frames. If we don't have... right. Thank you for confirming what I am saying before I've said it. Thank you, George. Yes, two separate reference frames in order to achieve the Coriolis effect. That, by definition, is the Coriolis effect. So, if you are asserting that we don't have separate reference frames, why would we have any Coriolis effect?
I never said that. I said you can have independent masses of air within the atmosphere that act independently of the atmosphere in its entirety. So you have two reference frames. You have an observer standing on the surface of the Earth, and you have a reference frame on these air masses that act independently.
And Nathan, can you just read what Ali B's just said in the side chat? Literally just now. He's just put, must be a nightmare for pilots dodging these rogue pockets of atmosphere. Does that make sense to you there, George?
Well, they are. You have shear force.
You're not familiar with wind, aren't you, Ranty?
No, rogue pockets.
You're denying
wind.
that
It's called wind.
Rogue pockets
Sorry,
of
so
atmosphere.
let me get this straight. So the bullet deflection is caused by wind.
Not
No.
talking about the bullet deflection. We're talking about air deflection.
A bullet deflection, a bullet trajectory is independent of the atmosphere.
Coriolis.
Sorry, when it was described. Sorry, just let me get it clear. Sorry, George. Just want to get it clear. When it was explained in the videos that I've watched on bullets that are asserted to be moved, it's because the Earth is moving underneath the bullet, according to the definition cited in those videos. They say the Earth continues to rotate underneath the bullet while it travels through this. Sorry, I hadn't quite finished. You're doing a bit of a rumpus, George. So it's asserted that the bullet strays because of a Coriolis effect. When it leaves the Earth, which continues to turn underneath that reference frame, that's why you have a deflection. Now, you're saying that the reference frame it travels through, and according to them causes the deflection, isn't a separate reference frame. Is that correct?
I did not say that.
So is it? So just let me get a concise answer from you, George. Is the Earth and atmosphere separate reference frames or one reference frame?
Really?
You can consider it a single reference frame.
So how do we have the Coriolis effect then?
Because there are masses of there. Okay.
What, wind? Wind, George? Because of wind?
to
Sorry,
a-
what were you going to say, George? What were you going to say?
What
Masses
are
of
we
what?
talking about here?
What were you going to say, George? Pockets of what? Wind?
I was going to say, yes, if you have a ballistic projectile, like going from a gun or a howitzer gun, a rifle or whatever, that is a reference frame that is independent of the atmosphere as a whole and the Earth as a whole. The atmosphere and the Earth can be considered as a single reference frame, and that projectile is another reference frame.
Correct.
Sorry, the projectile is the thing that's going to be deflected according to the point of view of the observer. It's not a reference.
No.
Sorry, I hadn't finished again, George. I got halfway through a sentence, and now you're talking again. The bullet is the thing we're observing. The reference frame is the roundabout and the air, or the Earth and the atmosphere, not the bullet.
The bullet deflects with respect to an observer on the surface of the Earth or traveling with the atmosphere as a whole. To someone on the surface, that bullet appears to deflect, whereas from the bullet's point of view, its reference frame, it's going in a straight line.
Yes, I understand that the bullet's travelling in a straight line, but from your point, it's deflected because it's no longer in its original reference frame when it was attached to the Earth in the gun.
Correct. Yes. Yes.
So let me get it clear. So let me get it clear. It is when leaving the gun in a separate reference frame then.
At the point it leaves the muzzle of the gun, it's in its own reference frame.
So it's in a separate so it's in a separate reference frame to the Earth spinning underneath. Exactly as described in the Coriolis effect. So we have separate reference frames, the atmosphere and the Earth, exactly as I asserted.
No, the atmosphere and the Earth are the same.
Rumpus, I'm not talking to you.
No. The atmosphere is attached to the Earth.
Oh, so why do we get the Coriolis effect then, George? I'm back to being confused because you've just gone through it step by step with me, and we've established that the reason it deflects is because when it leaves the gun, it goes into a separate reference frame. Now you're saying that it's attached. So I'm a bit confused, George.
No, I did not say that.
I
said the bullet is in its own reference frame, traveling in a straight line through the atmosphere. The atmosphere is attached to the Earth in a rotating reference frame. So there are two reference
if it's
frames.
attached,
the bullet in its own trajectory, which is in a straight line in its reference frame, and then the atmosphere in general as a whole appears to be attached to the Earth.
Not in general, and as
Sorry,
a whole, and appear.
again,
That's three separate things you just said there, and all of them are bullshit.
I'm back to being confused. If it's leaving the gun and in the same reference frame, there is no deflection, George.
I'm sorry, say what again?
If it leaves the gun and is in the same reference frame with the atmosphere... I hadn't finished, George. If you could let me finish a single sentence, you might find out. According to you, they are the same reference frame, the atmosphere and the Earth. If that
I did not say that. No,
he said atmosphere. That's correct, George. He said atmosphere and the Earth. You misheard him.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm watching.
He was correct.
Something.
He was correct.
Okay.
Moron.
Yes, the atmosphere and the Earth are the same reference frame. The bullet trajectory, the bullet projectile is in a reference frame separate from the Earth and the atmosphere.
Well, that's two different things. You can't have it be in the same reference frame and in a different reference frame. That's doublespeak.
It's not in the same
claimed it
Rumpus,
was.
you have got one more
in a
chance to
different
shut your mouth,
reference frame.
Rumpus, one more time. I'm talking to George.
Nathan, maybe you should say it slower for him.
Man.
I don't think he's getting
I'll
it.
say it nice and slow for George. Yes, I think you're right.
Him.
I'll try it one more time, nice and slow. In order to have the Coriolis effect, we must have two separate reference frames so that we can see the bullet deflect. If there is not two separate reference frame, there is no deflection to see. So, when the bullet leaves the gun, it must be in a separate reference frame in order to see any deflection.
Correct.
So we have a separate reference frame, the atmosphere.
No, it's the same as the Earth.
So then we don't see a deflection because it's not leaving the reference frame.
The bullet leaves the Earth atmosphere reference frame to have its own reference frame. Therefore, you've got two reference frames.
Sorry, it leaves the Earth atmosphere reference frame.
The Earth and the atmosphere are in the same reference frame, except when
why am I now having this conversation with Rumpus? I was talking to George.
Okay, I think a critical point that you're missing here, Nathan, is the bullet is inside the gun. We're talking before it gets shot and leaves the muzzle of the gun. The Earth, the atmosphere, the gun are in the same rotating reference frame.
And the bullets start off with.
No, Rumpus, please.
So let me just get some clarity, George. So everything, the gun, the atmosphere, everything is all in one reference frame.
The bullet as well.
Rumpus, right, it's time to kick the Rumpus out. He just can't contain himself. Bye-bye, Rumpus. Yet another time you can't keep your mouth shut.
Bye, Rumpus.
So, it's all one reference frame, right, George? According to you.
Before the bullet exits the muscle, it's all in one reference frame.
Well, it's attached to the Earth, so it's attached to the Earth spinning reference frame.
Yes, and it is...
Don't kick me.
Okay, just for simplification, let's say we're at the equator, okay? Now, we all agree that in the spherical Earth model, the Earth spins at the equator with a tangential velocity of about 1,035 miles per hour.
No, we don't all agree on that. Absolutely not. Why would you assert such utter crap?
Well, I'm trying to explain the Coriolis effect to you. And
I don't need a spinning Earth to understand Coriolis. I can have it explained with a roundabout. You sit on a roundabout, it spins. You throw the ball, and because it's no longer attached to the spinning roundabout, from your position on the roundabout, it looks like it deflects. Although it continues in a straight line in its separate reference frame, the atmosphere.
Correct.
Now, you're saying that the atmosphere is attached to the roundabout.
The roundabout being the Earth, yes.
So if it's attached, when you let go of the ball, it's in the same reference frame, George.
No, it's acting independently.
Yeah, because if it's in the same reference frame, you
you're
don't get...
You're assuming that the atmosphere is carrying the projectile, which it doesn't.
Oh, sorry.
It's in free flight. It's in what we call free flight. It's acting independent of the air and the atmosphere.
Free flight through the separate reference frame, which is why we see the deflection. Correct?
Yes.
So we have a separate reference frame, George.
Yes, the Earth and the atmosphere.
Excellent. So the Earth and the atmosphere are two separate reference frames, George.
That's what I just said.
No, you continually asserted that they were attached, that they were one. Are you that stupid and senile that you can't remember what you said 2 minutes ago?
No, I haven't been inconsistent.
You said they were attached. Now, after dragging it out of you, you're now conceding that they are separate, George. So, do we have a firm concession?
Let's step back. What is attached?
Do we have a firm concession that in order for the Coriolis effect to exist, the bullet must travel into a separate reference frame? Take your time, George.
The atmosphere and the Earth are attached is a same rotating reference frame.
Then we don't have any Coriolis effect, George. If the ball is being thrown on a roundabout, but the atmosphere is travelling with the roundabout, it doesn't go into a separate reference frame. Therefore, you see no deflection, George. That's the antithesis of the Coriolis effect.
You're confusing.
No, I'm not confused. The Coriolis effect is very simple to understand. In order for it to be there, you need two separate reference frames. It's very clear.
You have two separate reference frames. You've got the roundabout with your atmosphere as one reference frame.
No, the atmosphere doesn't carry along with the roundabout. What kind of a dingbat are you? How many roundabouts have you seen with force fields carrying their atmosphere in a circle?
Well, of course, a roundabout can't do that.
Right! You absolute buffoon of an idiot. So we don't have two, then, George. We have one, because every roundabout has a force field around it with its own atmosphere that's the same reference frame as the spinning roundabout, you dingbat. Is that right?
No, you're the one that's obfuscating this thing. Forget about the roundabout. We're talking about the Coriolis effect on the Earth.
No, the Coriolis effect is the Coriolis effect. Doesn't matter what it's on. In order to have a Coriolis effect, George, why am I having to school you, old git? Why don't you know what the Coriolis effect is? Two separate reference frames are needed.
Take a step back. Take a step back.
It is a ball.
What are you talking about? Are you talking about like a merry-go-round or what you're calling a roundabout on a playground, or are we talking about the Earth?
I'm talking about the Coriolis effect.
Yes.
Yes, and in order to have a Coriolis effect, George, in order for it to exist, you have to have two separate reference frames.
What are you talking about here? Are we going to talk about a
roundabout, talking all over me again, George.
Talk about the Earth?
George, the Coriolis effect is an effect that is regardless of Earth. It exists. It's real. You don't need an Earth to explain the Coriolis effect.
If you have two separate, if you have a rotating and a non-rotating reference frame, you have a Coriolis effect.
Shut up, George. I hadn't finished speaking. You're very rude. In order to have... You're doing it again. In order to have a Coriolis effect, you must have two reference frames. If you don't, then you don't have a Coriolis effect.
Okay, I agree with that.
So, in order for the bullet to be subject to a Coriolis effect, you must have the Earth as one reference frame and the atmosphere as the other, George.
No.
Well, then you don't have a Coriolis effect. If you don't have separate reference frames, that's what the Coriolis effect is, George. Why is this taking so long to drum into you that is the Coriolis effect? The effect of deflection caused by two separate reference frames.
No, you're mixing up the fact that the bullet, when it leaves the gun, the muzzle of a gun, that it's somehow attached to the to a reference frame to the atmosphere, and that is false. That is totally incorrect. The bullet, the projectile, acts independent of the atmosphere. It's in its own reference frame that has nothing to do with the atmosphere.
Really? So it doesn't travel through the atmosphere at all?
Yes, it does.
So it has everything to do with the atmosphere then, George?
No. Okay, take a roundabout. Take a child's merry-go-round. You take a ball. You're at the center of the merry-go-round. It's spinning. You take a ball. You roll it outward. To a person standing on the merry-go-round, on the surface of the merry-go-round, it looks like it curves, but with respect to the ball.
Wrong. If you roll a ball on a roundabout whilst looking at it, and it is still in contact with the roundabout, it travels in a straight line from your position and in actuality. If you roll it on the roundabout, then you will not see any Coriolis effect because you are doing it in a single reference frame, you idiot.
No, I'm not doing it in a single. There's two references.
Yeah. The reference frame is the roundabout and the atmosphere is a separate reference frame. If you roll the ball on the roundabout, it remains in the same reference frame, George.
No, in the case of a roundabout, you don't even have to worry about the atmosphere. The atmosphere is independent. It's a third entity that you don't even worry about. You throw a ball on a roundabout, it goes out on a straight line from the center of the roundabout out. It's in its reference frame, and the roundabout is its own reference frame. The atmosphere has nothing to do with it.
Sorry, it went into the atmosphere, George.
Yeah, so what?
Well, that was the separate reference frame.
It's a third reference frame.
Sorry, what's the second reference frame then?
First reference frame is the ball
No, the
that you're throwing
second.
out.
Try
The
to
second
open your
reference
ears. Are you
frame
deaf?
is
your
surface of
age
the
causing you
roundabout.
to lose hearing? Not the first. The first would be the roundabout. I would assert shut your mouth. I would assert that the second is the atmosphere. You're saying the third is the atmosphere. So tell me what the second is.
The ball.
The ball's not a reference frame.
Yes, it is. It has
The
a
ball
reference
is a
frame.
ball. It's the thing that's going to be deflected when travelling in the second reference frame. It's the thing you're observing being deflected as a result of its travelling through the second reference frame. It's not a reference frame in and of itself, you idiot.
Yes, it is. No, you're the idiot.
Sorry.
God,
Are you serious? You're telling me a ball
Yeah, I'm
is
serious.
a reference
Yeah, I'm
frame?
very serious.
No, you don't understand the Coriolis effect. You're an idiot.
No, hardly.
And
Yes,
a liar,
you are.
and
You're
a
an idiot.
moron. Get him out of here.
Oh, John, you're an intellectual lightweight. My God.
I got a video of George giving his dog the chili willy.
Oh, get lost, P. Mars. You're a disgusting human being. If even that.
Really? Says the man who tried to ruin another man's career by contacting the people who gave him his license and questioning his integrity. Is that right, George? He's a disgusting human being, is he? Even though you put somebody's career at risk by contacting their license supplier. Yeah, you are total garbage, George. You are a disgusting human being, and you have lied through your back teeth about things that have happened in the aftermath.
Hey, you know what the elephant in the room here is?
You being a lying sack of shit? Yeah, it's not really an elephant. Everybody knows that you're a lying sack of shit, George. We all look at you with disdain.
Well, I don't give a damn.
Well, that's fine by me, but I am literally disgusted by you. I am holding back sick whilst talking to you.
You're all a bunch of nutcases.
Really, that's a great position to be in. And you ballers are all liars, every last one of you. Yeah, over the last week, we've shown a whole bunch of your gaggle of idiots to be complete disingenuous liars, George. You're one of them, yeah? With your 3-day-old comments that you claim to have spread all over the place about Bill Miller. Any signs of Bill Miller, by the way, George? Where is this Bill Miller character? Apparently he was a very prevalent flat earther that none of us have heard of.
I never said he's prevalent.
Oh, right. Just nobody's heard of him then, so why would you reference him if nobody's heard of him?
Have you heard of, what is it?
Let's just stick to Bill Miller. Don't try and ham-handedly segue away from your disingenuous lies, George.
Yeah,
BM,
you are
Nathan.
people that
it was
assume
BM.
that
He was referencing
BM
BM in a thread about Brian Mullen.
Yeah, referencing BM in a thread about Brian Mullen, and then suddenly he decides that it's not Brian Mullen anymore because basically he'd claimed that he could get in touch with him or had got in touch with him.
I never claimed I got in touch with Brian Mullen.
Yeah,
never did.
You said you got in touch with
No,
BM.
I didn't. You're the one that jumped
so you got in touch with Bill Miller, did you?
Yeah.
So you used BM. You used BM on a thread about Brian Mullen. Where was he? And you was using BM. Obviously, everyone's going to assume Brian Mullen.
I've never
Why would you then
referred to
turn
Brian
around and
Mullen
say Bill
as
Miller?
BM,
Did you think it was
ever.
quite funny?
I've always used his
We saw
name.
right
I've
through
always
you. We
used
saw
it
right
for
through you. There is no Bill
I've
Miller.
used last name as Mullen, or I've referred to him as Brian Mullen.
Why didn't you correct Wolfie then? When Wolfie, the very next message in the thread that Anthony used, to you, so a comment directed at you, George, said Brian Mullen, and you did not correct him. So why didn't you correct Wolfie? I don't get it.
Wolfie?
Yeah, his immediate message afterwards was about Brian Mullen and about you contacting Brian Mullen, but you didn't correct him.
No, it was that retard Jesse Kozlowski.
Oh, sorry, you're right. It was Jesse Kozlowski.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
He replied to you by name as a reply, i.e. it says plus George Netanyahu, and then he spoke to you directly after that message you're talking about with BM in it, and said specifically about Brian Mullen by name, and you did not correct him.
I didn't read the message.
Oh, that's handy. Right.
I don't know. I don't know what I don't recall. I don't remember what Jesse said or did not say. I don't go around correcting everybody on the message board.
What did Bill Miller say to you?
Regarding what?
What was the conversation with Bill Miller about?
Oh, it was several months ago. I had a conversation with him on and off about the flat Earth, and I showed him where some of the flat Earth concepts were wrong, just like I did with Barbie. Remember Barbie? She had about 3,500
Don't worry about Barbie.
subs.
Just specifically concentrate on the conversation you said you had. Specifically, hold on. I want to concentrate on. Hold on, Anthony. I want to concentrate on the conversation you had with Bill Miller. Because you said that you'd had a conversation with him. So I want to know what that conversation specifically was about.
I said I've talked to him a number of occasions over the last few months about some of the claims that flat earthers were made, specifically the stuff from Eric Dubé and others, and showed him where he got the physics wrong and where a lot of the stuff was just plain BS. And he came around and saw that a lot of these flat Earth videos were just plain wrong. I showed him even Brian Mullen's stuff and how he had totally botched up concepts in physics. And so he started telling some of his flat Earth friends, and they started getting really nasty. They didn't want him to leave the fold, just like what happened to Barbie.
George, I'm really sorry to interrupt you. George, you're telling me you said it 3 times. I showed him this, I showed him that. My question was about the phone conversation you said you had with him. Tell me about what was said during the conversation on the phone that you detailed in that message.
Well, we just talked about his conversion over to leaving flat Earth behind.
So what was said? What were the words used by you and him?
I don't know specifically the words. I didn't record it.
No, but you could surely remember vaguely.
Give you the general gist of the conversation. I can't
give me some of the words that were used specifically. The words, not what you showed him.
I can't give you the words specifically.
Why not? It's a phone conversation. I can remember a phone conversation that I had several months ago. You just vaguely remember the conversation enough to put it in absolutely dozens of YouTube thread comments like it was extremely important. And now you can't remember what the conversation was about. I don't really understand, George. That makes no sense.
Do you have his telephone number? Perhaps we could give him a call.
Get it. I was trying to get Anthony's attention. I posted it originally to his thread, and then I wanted to make sure him and the other flat earthers were going to see this, just to see what the reaction was going to be.
So you were
to see
lying.
If they are going to jump to conclusions that I was talking about Brian Mullen or Bill Miller, and
yes,
you
like
guys
Jesse
didn't
did.
Disappoint me whatsoever. You
like Jesse did.
Conclusions. If you'd done proper research and gone.
I'm asked you about a phone conversation you've had, George, and what was specifically said on the phone conversation, and now you're going to how you were testing other people. It seems to me like the person you duked was Jesse, but you didn't mention anything to him. So why would you assert that?
Yeah. I just want to say
Nathan,
there's a world of difference between Bill Miller and Brian Mullen, right? Brian Mullen is like universally well known on the flat Earth, and you were responding to that in his chat. Sorry, not his chat, in a video about him, right? And when you said that you were trying to trick us by using BM, like anybody would know Bill Miller. Nobody's even heard of the guy. So when you say we don't do our research, we didn't even know who you were. I'm not being funny, mate, but you're nobody anyway. So why would we care about you having a conversation with somebody that we don't know as well? How would we get our research if that was the case? The only person that you made to look an idiot was yourself.